But now, by contrast, there's an angelic touch in film 90 with Barry Norman.
Hello and welcome to It'll Be Alright in the 90s, a warm, safe place where 50p pieces are the size of dinner plates, bum bags go around your waist, and granola is still known as crunchy cereal. I'm Alex, and joining me is Stu the Floozy, not from Pusey. How are you, Stu?
I'm good, man. I'm happy with that now. Do you know, I'm happy to be the Floozy from Pusey. I think we should keep it.
Yeah, it's stuck now. It's a couple of episodes in, so...
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking myself, and there really is nothing that's a comfortable rhyme with Pewsham. So
No.
so I'm happy to move sort of 20 or 30 miles, in a different direction to make the nickname fit, figuratively speaking, you know.
Yeah.
So happy to go with that.
I didn't feel fully comfortable referring to myself as Alex the Pistol from Bristol. It's something about... I don't know, I wasn't sure. I thought if I called myself that this episode, then I'd have to do it every episode. So I'm not sure how much are we going to cement these into our intro process going forward.
Maybe we can wheel them out for special occasions. Like if we've got a real a guest that we're really proud to have on the pod, then we can crack out the nicknames. What do you think?
Yeah.
As you say, we don't want to wear them out, do we? So
no.
Yeah, otherwise it'll lose all meaning. So perhaps you're right on that. Perhaps you're right.
Yeah, special occasions, like when the Queen comes out in the full kit, with the scepter and stuff. That's only in special stuff like state openings and stuff. That's when we'll use the nicknames.
Yeah.
If any,
I would have gone with regalia there, but I like the way that you've gone with kit. That's fantastic. She comes out in a full kit.
Yeah, full kit wanker.
Steady on.
Sorry, Mum.
We don't want to get ourselves cancelled. Come on.
Regalia was exactly the word I was looking for. If any listeners out there want to suggest any nicknames for us, that's a bad idea. No, forget that.
No, forget that.
We don't want your nicknames.
No, forget.
That's asking for trouble.
Yeah.
Before we get into the meat of the episode, today's episode is sponsored by Alliance in Leicester, and they've got a good deal for you, the listener, on our behalf here. So if you pop into any of their branches in March or April and open a new current account, you can quote the code AllRight90s and they'll give you a special edition checkbook cover and ballpoint pen, so you can carry out your purchases in style. That's today's sponsor, Alliance in Leicester, with a nice financially themed offer for the listeners there.
Thank you, Alliance in Leicester. Fantastic. Two things spring to mind here. First of all, the untimely demise of the building society with the place name in it, Alliance in Leicester, Cheltenham and Gloucester, etc. There is still one called the Coventry, I think.
Yeah, Coventry Building Society. Yeah.
So they're still flying the flag for the for the place name building society.
Yeah.
The other thing is, sorry, carry on.
I was just going to say, do you think Norwich and Peterborough are still going? I should know this, really. Norwich City's finest ever sponsor.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to find out.
Yeah, I'll look into that.
And then maybe we can get some sponsorship off of them as well. That'd be good.
Yeah. Oh, good thinking.
Yeah.
So what were you going to say?
When did you last write a check?
I think it would have been to my last guitar teacher, and it would have been... because that was the only way I ever paid him, and that wasn't that long ago. Probably would have been 2016, 2017, something like that. So, yeah. What about you?
Your last guitar teacher, did he decide that you were so good that you didn't need any more lessons? Is that...
Yeah, it was a mutual decision. We came to an agreement with that.
I'm not sure if it's the last one I've written, but the last one I remember writing, I actually paid for my first car with a check, believe it or not. And there it is. Obviously you can't see this, listener, but Alex has just taken a swig of the Irish ale of the pod, the official Irish ale of the pod. He's got a lovely can of Caffrey's on the go tonight. You can hear it there. Is it sliding down the old tubes there nicely?
Oh, it is almost too easily. It's like I'm drinking air. That's how smooth it is.
Caffrey's, the taste of the 90s. Yes, where was I? I paid for my first car with a check. Yeah, £420, which I negotiated down from 450. So I got myself a nice £30 discount on a Mark II Fiesta with a choke, manual choke.
Yeah, lovely.
On a K plate, probably one of the last production cars ever to have a manual choke. But yeah, I paid for that with a check. So
lovely. Was that in Ford Blue?
It was, yeah. It was a sort of light. Well, I would almost say electric blue. Yeah.
It was, it's a classic blue. Our family Ford Escort, our first family Ford Escort of my life was that same color. You don't really get it anymore. Although I think the newish Ford Focus RS, or whatever it is, it's not. I can't think what it's called. But one of their colors is that same sort of shade of blue, and I was wondering if it was a callback to the 90s blue. But
do you know, I think you might have just solved a long-standing mystery for me there inadvertently, because I don't know if you know this, but my Fiesta was actually stolen about 9 months after I bought it, and I've always wondered why it was attractive to whoever stole it, and now I know it was the color.
Yeah,
it was that classic Ford blue.
Yeah.
It certainly can't have been the tapes in the glove box. It certainly can't have been that. So
no, they just desperately wanted a car with a manual choke, maybe. If that's one of my dream car spots, would be a 90s Ford in that blue. If anyone ever sees that, please do send in a photo, because that's the holy grail for me for car spotting.
I've got a picture of my Fiesta, so I'll put it up on our Instagram so that everyone can see. I'll dig that out. I did take a picture of it once in a car park somewhere, so I'll dig that out and put it up so that everyone can see the majesty of the Fiesta LX model.
Oh, blimey! For 420 quid.
Oh, yeah, I don't mess about, mate. I don't mess about, and there's something else I've just realised. When I bought it, it was like 32,000 miles on the clock or something. So I was like, wow, for a K plate in like 2008, so it would have been getting on for 20 years old by then. That's amazing. But of course, there are only 5 numbers on the mileometer, so it's probably gone round about 3 times. There we are. No service history. No questions asked. Time for What's the Most 90s, and we're going on another different tack this week after the celebrity scandal from last time. Alex, we're going into print media this time, and I want to ask you what you think the most 90s magazine is.
Well, good question. I think magazines in themselves are quite 90s because they have, I mean, there's still a lot of them around, but they were probably at their peak in the 90s. And I sort of had 2 avenues to go down. I consulted Kate Pro, legend of the pod, who's also, I think, a bit of a consultant of the pod on 90s issues. And she suggested Shout, Sugar, Ms, those sort of teen girl magazines. There's also Bliss. I was looking them up. They all seem to start in the mid-90s.
Just 17?
Yeah, that's definitely another big one. Although I looked it up, and that, I think, started quite early. Before the 90s, but definitely one of those fits nicely into that category. But I didn't really have any experience of them, so I haven't gone for them. I've gone for or kind of the male equivalent, but a bit older maybe, and I've gone for Lads Mags and specifically Loaded. I think Loaded is, I think FHM was a bigger magazine, had a bigger readership, but Loaded seems a little bit more 90s, just like full on lad culture in printed form. Started in 94. It did actually only went out of print in 2015, so it did last a long time, but I think it was at its peak in the late 90s, and just sort of summed up the decade. Loaded. What about you?
Absolutely. Well, I did have Loaded written down as one of my thoughts for this. I only ever bought one issue of Loaded. That was in about 2005. But as I recall, it was there was far less sort of culture and far more just soft porn, really. Is the only way really I can put it. But what I've gone for is a magazine that I actually bought every week in the 90s. So obviously I was a child in the 90s, so it is going to be a children's magazine. I've gone for Match magazine.
Oh, love
Match the Football Weekly. I was always a match guy. Never much of a shoot person, although I remember prioritizing shoot over match one week because Mark Bosnich was on the cover. And I have recently made efforts to track down that issue on eBay so that I can get it again. But unfortunately, I've been unsuccessful so far. So if anyone has that issue of Shoots with Mark on the cover, I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to give you some cold hard cash for it. But yeah,
if you do get in contact with Stu, don't forget he drives a very hard bargain. We've heard that now.
Yeah, I'll negotiate maybe £3 or £4 off your asking price, but I got Match every week. I learned a lot, obviously, about football from it, from my formative interest in football, and you come to realise this in later years, but things like that also give you a grounding in other subjects as well. So I think that from reading Match every week and obviously looking at world football and looking at all the statistics and things like that, I learned countries, capitals, flags, those sorts of things as well, just through osmosis from there being different, obviously, countries involved in the magazines and players from different countries and that sort of thing. I used to love the statistics in the back. They used to print, even though it was a kids magazine, they printed a proper statistics bit in the back every week with the previous week's matches. So it'd be who played, who came on as a sub, who didn't, what the attendance was, and I used to devour all that as well, routinely. As always, these things peter out, as did my subscription to the Beano, which I almost went for, but it's a comic, not a magazine. Big Beano guy as well, but. Yeah, I would have to go for. I think I'd have to go for Match magazine as my favourite magazine of the 90s.
Yeah, great choice. I did actually think about Match and Shoot because I did also get. I didn't really get them. I did get the magazine because my wall was covered in posters from them. I don't think I was that loyal to one or the other, but probably whichever one had Norwich in it. And we got the annuals as well occasionally. It was actually was it a Shoot annual? It might have been a Royal of the Rovers annual that I used to choose the club that I was going to support from just by flicking through it and thinking I'm going to choose one of these teams at random. I need to track that down as well, actually, in the same way that you're tracking down that issue of Shoot. I should track down that annual and it should be framed somewhere because it's so significant.
There was also one. There was a reasonably short-lived magazine called Big Shots, which was like more of a poster magazine, but every week or month or however often it was published, it had a poster from every Premier League club in it. So every time you bought it, you were guaranteed to get a poster of somebody who played for Villa or whatever. But I just used to put them all up. So there's there is a picture of my bedroom from around this time, and there's the free poster that must have kept coming that month. The big size poster was Leeds United, so I've just got a big Leeds United poster on my wall, even though I've got never had any feeling for Leeds United ever. And then on the same wall there's Everton, Coventry. They're all there. So yeah, Big Shots was another one as well for that poster fix, and I used to just change them all the time. So
nice.
Great days.
For today's episode, as you'll probably know, we are starting our decade-long run-through of the years in film for the 90s. So this one will obviously be on the year 1990, and then we're going to do one for each year sporadically over the coming months, just to give ourselves a bit of time to take each year as it comes, rather than trying to squeeze the whole decade into one, which would be way too much. So we're going to do a bit of a rundown of what the box office was for this year and also the award winners. And then we're each going to choose three personal choices of films that meant something to us from this year for various reasons, much like previous episodes. And of course, we want to hear what you think about these choices and what your own choices are. We have already got some correspondence in from you, which we'll go through at the end. But yeah, we're going to start off, I think, with box office.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll read you about the 10 highest grossing films of 1990 worldwide, shall I, to get us started?
Yeah.
So from 10 to 1, at number 10, it's Kindergarten Cop. Number 9, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Number 8 is Presumed Innocent. Number 7 is Die Hard 2. Number 6 is Back to the Future Part 3. Number 5, Total Recall. Number 4, Dances with Wolves. Number 3 is Pretty Woman. Number 2 is Home Alone. And number 1, by some stretch in the gross figures, is Ghost. So that's your top 10 of 1990.
Not a bad top 10. I've never heard of Presumed Innocent. I've heard of all the others.
I was about to say that. That's the only one I haven't heard of. I'm ashamed to say I've only seen about 3 of these in the entire top 10. So I mean, maybe I have to make an admission here before we go any further. I mean, I don't want people to start saying that I don't take my responsibilities on this podcast seriously enough. I mean, we all heard the Californication debacle a few episodes back, but until fairly recently in my life, say about 6 or 7 years ago, there were a lot of classic movies that I'd never seen, and I just didn't really count myself as much as of a movie person. That has changed a lot now, and as I've said in previous episodes, I think it's good in a way because it's given me the chance now to see these things for the first time. But it does have the side effect of having to look at this list with you tonight and say, I've only seen, a certain percentage of them, whereas I'm sure it's probably the other way around for you, and you've seen most, if not all of them.
Yeah,
apart from Presumed Innocent.
Yeah, I've seen 8 of these of the top 10.
Mm-hmm.
I've not seen Presumed Innocent, and I've not seen Total Recall either, which is, I mean, it's a bit of a classic, I suppose, in action film circles. I only saw Pretty Woman the last week, so that's only a recent one.
Okay.
But yeah, there's some classics in there, some personal classics. I think I was 5 in 90. Well, I turned 5 in 1990. So I was young, but I think I saw a lot of these sort of as soon as they came on TV, I suppose, or in years after that, because I wouldn't have gone. Well, I don't know. I'm going to mention this later. I'm not quite sure exactly when my first cinema outing was, but it could have been around this time. But yeah, there was a lot of nostalgia looking through this list of films, not just this top 10, but all the ones that came out this year, because it was just that point in my life, really, where films coming out in this year would have been massive in my childhood. So I guess you would have been, how old were you? Were you 3, 2 or 3?
Yeah. Far too young. I can pinpoint, I think, with some degree of accuracy, my first cinema trip, if you're interested.
Oh, absolutely.
I seem to recall it being midweek to the Astoria in Chippenham, as was, and I think the Jungle Book must have been reissued because it was technically the Jungle Book.
Yeah.
I know it happened. I can't really remember it. The first one I can remember is Space Jam at the ABC in Bath, which is now the Comedia. And it was like a Saturday or Sunday morning or lunchtime, and the entire place was empty apart from myself and my parents. And then just before it started, 3 other people came in, sat directly behind us, and talked the whole way through it. But I'm definitely going to talk about Space Jam in our 1996 episode, so I'll say no more on that, and we'll revisit it in a few months' time.
Yeah, nice. On to the award winners. I'm not going to mention the Golden Globes, as they are, as I'm sure some listeners know, in absolute disgrace at the moment. And also, who cares about the Golden Globes? But the Academy Awards. Now, this is the award ceremony from March 1991, but they're obviously the films that are winning these awards were released the previous year. The best film was Dances with Wolves. The best actor was Jeremy Irons for Reversal of Fortune, which I've not heard of.
No.
Best director was Kevin Costner for Dances with Wolves. Best actress was Kathy Bates for Misery. Best supporting actor was Joe Pesci for Goodfellas, and best supporting actress was Whoopi Goldberg for Ghost. It looks like Whoopi Goldberg won best supporting actress at both the Golden Globes, the Oscars, and the BAFTAs, so she got a clean sweep there. Yeah, I don't know what you think about those winners.
Well, for the main thing that strikes me is that Goodfellas isn't in the top 10 highest grossers, because that's clearly a classic movie. Is it sort of Has it been reviewed over time to become a classic, or was it an instant classic? I'm not sure, but it seems strange that Kindergarten Cop should be in there and Goodfellas isn't.
Yeah, it is surprising.
But then again, it seems strange to me that Kindergarten Cop didn't make more money than Total Recall. But then they're two different Arnie films in the top 10. But
yeah, looking at the BAFTAs, actually, they went all of those 5 main categories. They went for something different. So the Goodfellas won Best Film and Best Director. Best Actor was Philippe Noiret for Cinema Paradiso. Jessica Tandy won Best Actress for Driving Miss Daisy. And Best Supporting Actor was Salvatore Caccio for Cinema Paradiso. Oh, and Whoopi Goldberg. So that was the same as the Oscars. But apart from that, gone a different way there. A little bit classier, I'd say. Although there's nothing wrong with these Oscar films, apart from Reversal of Fortune, which I've never heard of. So yeah, that's the award winners and the highest grossing films. So let's move on to our personal choices. Stu, do you want to go first with your first?
Yeah, certainly can. So my first choice is the end, or we thought it was the end, of a dynasty of movies. I've gone for Rocky V, released November the 16th, 1990, directed by John G. Avildsen, and a 30% Rotten Tomatoes rating. So I've got my Rotten Tomatoes rating for all of these movies. 7 Golden Raspberry nominations. These are the important awards that we need to look at, by the way.
Yeah, I should have read these out. Damn, what are you doing?
Forget about the Golden Globes, quite rightly, but get your Golden Raspberries in, please. I wanted to mention this because, as I say, it's the 5th and was the final Rocky film at the time. And I think it's possibly the biggest swing between the best movie of a franchise and the worst, because I think Rocky IV is the best of the Rocky movies, and a very good friend of mine, Mikey, believes it to be the best movie of all time. He's such a fan of Rocky IV that he thinks it's the best of all time. But yeah, Rocky V is unfortunately not great. It doesn't drag. It moves along.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's seen it recently or caught up with it, but I'll try and give a quick précis of the plot from memory. So Rocky's retired after his victory in Moscow over Ivan Drago, of course, thanks to sort of physical complications. He's signed his power of attorney over to somebody thoroughly dodgy who loses all his money and doesn't pay any tax for him. And then he links up and starts training a chap called Tommy the Gun Morrison. Tommy the Gun Morrison, I think. Hang on. Now, wait a minute. I've got that wrong. I will have to look at my notes. Tommy Morrison was the real life boxer who played him. Okay, so Tommy Morrison, who played the character is called Tommy the Machine Gun. That's his name.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
of course it is.
Nice.
Lots of things go wrong. Tommy turns on Rocky, and they end up having a brawl in like a sort of car park, which Rocky gets goaded into. I think Tommy the Machine Gun punches poorly, and then they end up having a brawl in the car park, and Rocky wins and does over Tommy the Machine Gun's manager as well. As I say, it's it punches along, but it's the franchise is sort of getting probably tired by then on its 5th movie, and probably an ill-advised sort of money spinning film that the studio wanted. Perhaps, I'm not too sure, but I wanted to mention Rocky V first because, as I said at the top, it's something that I've only seen for the first time recently. I've only seen all of the Rocky films once. I started watching them a couple of years ago, various intervals. And yeah, Rocky V, I thought needed a mention.
Yeah, excellent. I have also only seen them quite recently, but I've only seen the first 2. And yeah, like I say, in the last few years, I've never seen the 4th or 5th or the 3rd. Mm-hmm. I have a vague idea that the 4th one is very sort of Cold War, isn't it? It's very big on the Soviet Union versus.
It is, yes.
The US, but yeah, the first one especially is really quite gritty, isn't it? It's not that showy. It's quite
Definitely, yeah. The one with Mr. T is decent, which I think is Rocky 3. Yeah, you know, and Rocky 4 is probably the best of the series, I would say. But yeah, Rocky 5, and if I tell you that the 30% Rotten Tomato rating puts it in second place in my three movies I'm going to mention in terms of rating, you know we've got some classics to follow.
There can't be many good fifth in a series films, can there? I mean, there's some that have, unless you count like Star Wars or James Bond or something like that, it's a bit different. But I can't think of anything. Do you say Carry On?
Yeah, of course, Carry On.
I've not seen any Carry On films, so.
What was the fifth Carry On? Hang on a minute. I've got to look at this now. List of Pimp My Ride episodes. No, that must have been something I was looking at before. Carry On. Here we go. Filmography 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, Carry On Regardless. Oh no, that's bad. Yeah. There you go. See, it stands to reason. Stands to reason.
Yeah. I'm sure there's someone out there will argue that one of the Fast and the Furious, well, the fifth Fast and the Furious is good, but I have no idea. I've only ever seen the first one of them. So
how many of those have there been now?
Oh, it's loads. At least 8, maybe 9. They're in space. I think they're in space now, aren't they? I don't know where they're going to go next.
Brilliant.
Away, hopefully. I mean, I don't care. Whatever. Right. Okay. That's a good choice. I like that. Very 90s.
Thank you.
My first choice is the aforementioned Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So this was number 9, I think, in the top 10. This was released in November of 1990 in the UK. So I was 5.5. And now this is what I sort of referred earlier to, not knowing when my first cinema trip was. It would have been almost certainly to the Astoria in Chippenham as well, because that's where I went for all my childhood films if I wasn't on holiday. And me and my brother and parents were talking about this and trying to work out whether I would have seen it. I definitely saw the third Turtles film in the cinema at the Chippenham Astoria. Maybe the second one as well, but this one, I was only 5.5. It seems quite unlikely. This could be the first one I ever saw in the cinema. But even if it wasn't, it was definitely a film I watched a lot at home. It was just, it obviously had an impact on me early because me and my brother got given the Turtles figures. It was just during the craze, one of those famous Christmas crazes. This was the Turtles craze. And I think it was the Christmas of 1990, so I must have been into them. So maybe I did see it at the cinema. I don't know, but yeah, I was really into them. Me and my brother, I think we got mentioned on the Christmas episode of the pod that we gave ourselves names. I was Alex L, and Adam was Adam Angelo. So we were deep into it, and it's just cool. I think I've seen it obviously since as a grown up, and I think it still stands up pretty well. I think it's genuinely funny. It's got a good story. So it's a classic sort of action film story. And I think the aesthetic is great. It looks really sort of stylish and dark and gloomy, but in a cool way. It's got great characters like the Turtles themselves, but you've also got April O'Neil, Casey Jones, who is a really cool character. Then you've got Shredder as well, who's one of the coolest bad guys in film and comic book history, I think. And it's just, it's a cool film. I think if you've grown up watching the cartoon that was around in the 90s, you'll have a sort of different view of the Turtles maybe, or if you've only seen the cartoon, I should say. But the film was a lot darker and it was a lot edgier, and there's just little bits in it that just really stand out, like the lair that the Foot Clan like operate out of, and it's like a warehouse. And they're basically recruiting teenagers and kids from around New York to join this criminal gang. And the hideout is just like a warehouse that's full of skate ramps and arcade machines, and everyone's drinking like fizzy drinks and just sort of hanging out. And it just looks like the coolest place in the world. So that was something that really stands out. But it's really just a film from my childhood. It's one of the standout films from my early childhood, I think. And there was obviously 2 more after this, both of which were pretty good from what I remember, but this one is definitely the best. And then it's been sort of sullied a bit by the Michael Bay produced more recent one. This is still the original and still the best. And Yeah, it was as soon as I saw it on the list, I had to have it basically.
They were huge, weren't they? When they hit the UK, it was a big phenomenon, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think in the UK they switched it from. I think in America it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but when it came here, they had to change it to Mutant Hero Turtles because it was less violent, which is just kind of laughable. But yeah, it's still, that didn't stop it being huge when it came over here. So, yeah.
I remember slightly older kids at primary school being really into. Can I call them TMNT for brevity, or
Oh
or
yeah,
do you want
absolutely.
me to full title them like
No,
all the way
TMNT
through?
is fine.
Okay, well then that's a bit of a mouthful in itself. Yeah, but I think it sort of passed my year group and sort of younger kids by a little bit, maybe because it was like that real early 90s phenomenon, and then it had been sort of replaced by the time we came round to being able to appreciate such things. The first one I really remember is when the BBC started repeating Thunderbirds for the first time on TV since it had been shown originally, and they did the whole Tracy Island thing on Blue Peter, and that became massive. So I think that was. How about that? So you guys had something fresh and new and current from America, and we got a TV show that was already 20 years old.
Yeah.
And that was coming back round, but there we go. No, the Turtle's fantastic.
What's your second choice?
Okay, I've gone for another quite bad movie, I'm afraid. I've saved my best for last, we'll put it that way.
Okay.
It's another movie in a series. I watched this at the weekend to get a fresh perspective on it. It's RoboCop 2. Released on June the 22nd, 1990, directed by Irving Kershner. Now, if I tell you, the original RoboCop, the first one, 1987, a 90% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. RoboCop 2, 30%. Okay, so we're already looking at a 50% drop. Yeah. RoboCop 3, which came out in 1993, which I'm definitely not going to talk about, so I'll mention it here. 6%.
Wow.
So it's definitely the law of diminishing returns here of RoboCop 2.
Yeah.
Again, the Detroit, close to bankruptcy, and Omni Consumer Products, OCP, are ready to take over and run the city. There's also a plot involving a street drug called Nuke, which is being run by a gang with a 12-year-old boy, seemingly quite high up in the ranks of this drug cartel. OCP want to program a replacement for RoboCop. Initially, they want to use the brains of recently deceased Detroit cops in order to do the same sort of thing as they did with the original RoboCop. And then a scientist has the bright idea of using the brains of death row inmates instead for their own reasons. The head of the Nuke gang gets murdered, and they use his brain in order to raise a new replacement for RoboCop. There's a big battle at the end. The original RoboCop wins. Everybody's happy. Whilst everybody's happy, there's been a lot of violent deaths. Somebody gets vivisected at one point. It was a real nice Sunday afternoon movie, I have to say.
Well, this probably isn't going to surprise you to say that I've never seen it. But now I want to see it. Actually, to be honest, what I want to see is the first one again. You've made me want to watch the first one again, because I haven't seen that since I was a kid, and I did love that at the time, from what I remember. And yeah, to have, as you say, it was 90% the original on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yes, I mean that's not much gets 90, so sounds like something that would probably still stand up, but.
Well, I mean, the first RoboCop is a stone cold classic, and from what I've read, again, probably or maybe similar to Rocky V, RoboCop 2 came about because of the Orion Pictures, the studio, wanting to capitalize on the success, and then it not being. I think that the original director, Paul Verhoeven, was working on Total Recall actually, so he couldn't direct it. Peter Weller, who obviously plays Alex Murphy, the RoboCop, had big reservations about it, but did it anyway, and it is not in the third one. So I would definitely say stick with the original RoboCop. If there's one thing that I'm telling the listeners about the movies of 1990s so far, is I'm telling them the ones to avoid. I think that's what I'm giving the advice on.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, it's I think it's about an hour and 50. It doesn't seem over long. You know, that there is plenty of action, but it's, you know, as I mentioned, the plot with the 12-year-old boy being a kingpin of the drug world seems a bit sort of needless and facile. To put that in as something, you know. I had a look at the actor who plays him, and I think he's a stockbroker now. He sort of gave up the acting and went into stockbroking. So stockbroking, yeah. So fair play to him. But RoboCop 2. If you've got absolutely nothing else to watch, it's all right. But if you've got the choice, go for the original RoboCop.
Yeah, nice. Okay, my second choice is a creepy one. It's Arachnophobia, which was released. Actually, this was released in the USA in July 1990. It wasn't released in the UK until 1991. But I'm still going to have it because it was first released in 1990. That's where it appears in the Wikipedia list of the year. So that's what we're going off. Well, that's what I'm going off anyway. So yeah, Arachnophobia stars Jeff Daniels and John Goodman among others. And it's about a small Californian town which gets infested by these deadly spiders. And I've chosen it just because it was another sort of standout film in my childhood. It was, I think, probably my brother was watching it on TV. I don't remember sitting down to watch it from the beginning the first time, but he must have been watching it, and I just remember sort of catching sight of it and sort of being drawn to it, I suppose, because it's just... I don't know if I was scared of spiders before it. I think I've never really liked them. But I obviously had enough feelings about them to think that it was a scary idea that there were these spiders everywhere. It was just something that really stood out. I watched it many times after that as well. There were certain scenes that really stood out that I would always be waiting for. And Jeff Daniels and John Goodman, I think both good actors and sort of compelling actors. So I had a pretty good cast as well for what is essentially, I suppose, a bit of a trashy B movie. I don't know what it did in the box office, but because they're two big names. So I don't know how it did in America. I haven't actually looked to see what it got on Rotten Tomatoes. I should do that. Actually, let me do that now. It won't take a second.
Yeah, I mean that seems to be the barometer which we've fallen into using for these things. Yeah. So let's go for it.
I've just typed in Iraq, and the first ones that come up are Arachnado, which I think looks like a spider tornado film. Arachnocide, Arachnoquake, which is earthquake spider crossover. Arachnid, where the hell is it? No, I really didn't want to come up there. On Rotten Tomatoes, it's got 93%.
Wow.
Weirdly, it's got 93% for the reviewer rating, but the audience score is only 54%, which I think is really surprising for what is like a B movie, really, that the reviewers like it a lot more than the audience. I don't know, maybe the audience just are arachnophobic and they don't like spiders so much that they don't like the film, but I haven't seen it as an adult, and I need to really, because I would like to see if it does stand up. But it was quite significant in my early childhood, and I remember people at primary school talking about it as well. So it was obviously something. It was sort of in the air whenever it was on TV, on terrestrial TV back then. So I just felt like I had to have it. It was significant in my childhood, and a good film, I think. I'd love to know what other people think of it. Any listeners? That's my second choice.
Cool. I was going to say it sounds like something with a bit of a cult following, but if the audience reviews are a lot less positive than the critic reviews, then I guess that puts paid to that theory. But I'm really surprised by that. But
there you go. I do have one little bit of trivia about it as well, actually, because they obviously used real spiders on set for most of it, and they were so hot on not harming any of the spiders that they created these special boots that had big, thick soles, but they would hollow out the sole. So John Goodman, there's a scene where John Goodman stands on one to crush it, and so he's wearing these boots that has a hollowed out sole, so he can stand on the spider without harming it, which I liked.
Oh, how lovely!
They were so careful not to harm the spiders, who at the end of the day are actors, and I don't know if they were unionized, but they were actors. So.
Well, were they all credited? I mean,
good question.
Does the film have an 8.5-hour running time because of the credits?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm imagining a fair few spiders would have been involved here.
Yeah, and some were probably on the crew as well. I imagine doing like the makeup and stuff. You can't have a human doing the makeup on a spider, can you? So
no, yeah, that's true. Yeah. They'd have had to have had their own, their own crew and team and that sort of thing. So yeah. I mean, great for the spider movie industry as well.
Yeah,
I
imagine most of them would almost certainly be better actors than Jared Leto. So there you go. What's your third choice?
Okay, I promised I'd save the best to last, and I have done. Can't do a retrospective of the movies of 1990, of course, without talking about Home Alone. We're all aware of the plot of Home Alone, so I'm not going to go over that, but I will, of course, mention that it was released on November the 16th, 1990, and directed by Chris Columbus, and hang on, yeah, here we go. So we're using the Rotten Tomatoes rating system here. Okay, have a guess what the Rotten Tomatoes rating is for Home Alone.
Oh, it has to be in the 90s, surely. No one doesn't like Home Alone. Tell me, the fact you raised it makes me think it isn't in the 90s.
68%.
What?
Yeah, that's
really weird.
Yeah, very, very strange indeed. Surprisingly low, I would say.
Yeah.
Another one I'm sad to admit, because of course it isn't an absolute classic and a Christmas classic at that, but I'd never seen it until 2 or 3 years ago. But obviously now it's a staple of every Christmas now that I've been converted. One thing to note here, again, it's a series that's got out of control. Although I don't think anybody in their right mind watches anything past the first two. Although I believe this Christmas just gone, I think a new one has come out on Disney Plus with Rob Delaney and Aisling Bea.
Yeah.
Which I haven't got around to watching, and obviously I love those two guys. So I will have to check that out. But including that, there are 6 movies in the series currently. After Home Alone 2, it sort of went to TV movies and straight to VHS. But interestingly, Home Alone 4 brings back all the original characters under their original character names, but all played by different actors.
Oh, right.
So there's Kevin McAllister, there's Buzz, all the original character names are there, but all played by different actors, which is very strange.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was a fourth one. I knew there was a third one that had a completely different looking actor, but I didn't know there was a fourth one.
So we have Home Alone and Home Alone 2: Lost in New York, which are obviously the ones that are viewed as the classics. Then there's Home Alone 3, which is just known as Home Alone 3, with the title character Alex Pruitt, played by an actor called Alex D. Linz, who I've never heard of. Home Alone 4, Taking Back the House, with Kevin McAllister, played by Mike Weinberg, again, who I've never heard of. Then there's Home Alone: The Holiday Heist from 2012, with Finn and Alexis Baxter as the main characters. And then, yes, from last year, there's Home Sweet Home Alone, which is the latest entry into the series. Okay. So plenty there to get involved with. I think I said it on the Christmas episode. If I didn't, then I've definitely said it on another episode. There are 2 things that always strike me when watching the original Home Alone. Firstly is that house is massive, and how can they ever afford it?
Yeah.
And all the international travel at Christmas. Secondly, I think Kevin's family is terrible, and he's better off without them.
Yeah.
Every time I watch it, I think I hate you all. I just think you're awful.
Yeah, they are horrible. It's abusive. It's without a doubt. There is child neglect, if not child abuse, in there. And
I got very similar feelings towards Biff from Back to the Future. Back to the Future 2, I watched again at the weekend. I had a bit of a movie weekend. And I get very similar feelings towards Biff in Back to the Future, the way I feel about Buzz in Home Alone.
Yeah, they're really similar, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah. So
They
maybe
look
I
the
just
same.
have a problem with sort of older brother type characters who are a bit nasty towards their younger siblings and friends. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something that hangs around from my own childhood. I'm not sure, but yeah, I have a particular problem with that type of character, it would seem. But Home Alone, yeah, a big notable film from 1990, and one that still rightly gets venerated today. One last thing is that I was doing a bit of channel hopping last night. We're recording this at the end of March, listeners, and Home Alone 2 was on film 4, and I thought,
I noticed that. What's that all about? Who's watching a Christmas film in March?
I know.
It's madness.
If you were, then you need to take a look at yourself. That's all I'm saying.
Weird choice. I mean, it's not as if there's not any other films out there they could be showing. Show the first one. I mean, no, that's also Christmas. What am I talking about? Yeah. Well, it's a great film. I don't think I saw it as a child either. Or maybe I didn't. I just don't remember it at all. But it's something I feel like has come into my life a bit later. And I think I saw it this Christmas. And there were bits towards the end that I really didn't recognise. And I think I either hadn't seen it before or I hadn't seen it since I was a kid. But I definitely like the first one a lot more than the second one. I love New York. I love that setting, but I like the first one just a bit. I just think it's a bit better. But it's interesting that Joe Pesci was in this and Goodfellas in the same year. I wonder how far apart he filmed them. Because they're quite. I mean, he's kind of scary in both. It's a lot scarier in Goodfellas, but very different roles.
Well, the same with Arnie again in Kindergarten Cop and Total Recall coming out in the same year.
True.
And when we get round to doing 1991 in a few weeks' time, I've got a similar thing to mention with Anthony Hopkins. So, yeah, that's going to be a big thing I'm going to mention in the next episode. So a theme is developing here, I think.
Yes. Okay, my third and final choice was released in the UK in September, directed by Matthew Caton Jones, starring among others Matthew Modine, Billy Zane, and Sean Astin, who was Samwise Gamgee from Lord of the Rings, and it's the Memphis Belle, or Memphis Belle as its proper title is. And this, if you don't know, which wouldn't be that surprising because I don't think it was a particularly massive film. I know a lot of people my age have seen it and enjoyed it, but it follows a US air crew of a B-17 Flying Fortress based in the UK during the Second World War, and they have to fly one last mission, basically, one bombing run over Germany in order to hit 25 missions, which means they'll have completed their tour of duty and they get to go home. Which sounds a little bit Hollywood, the idea of like one last mission, but it's actually based on a real story on a US bombing crew of a flying fortress. So it is basically a true story. I don't know. The details might not be that true, but generally the overall story is based on a real thing, which was actually made into a documentary film in 1944. Just reading up on this, so I hadn't known this before, but so there's this documentary film made in 1944 about this bombing crew. This is obviously still during the war, and they actually had camera crews on real bombing raids on the planes making this documentary. And there was one crew died because their plane got shot down while they're making this documentary, which I just thought was wild. And this, I mean, I love this. I love the film. It was probably the sort of film I was watching in weekend afternoons, a classic weekend afternoon film. I definitely, again, a bit like with Turtles, and Arachnophobia, actually, I picture watching it with my brother, but not my parents. So it's probably the sort of thing, they'd put on and let us watch. And yeah, I think it tied in with my passion for World War II history, which I think would have been around this time, would have been kicking off around this time. And also Airfix kits. I had an Airfix kit of a B-17 Flying Fortress, which would have been inspired by this. So I like that about it. But also I think this is something I've come to realize with my film tastes, is that I like, and books actually, I quite often like stories which they sort of follow a gang or a group going on some mission or some journey. So Stand By Me is another example of that. Lord of the Rings, that sort of thing. A group, usually of boys, because that's what I would have identified most with. Going off on some adventure or some mission. That's kind of what this is. But it's just, another film from my childhood that I remember watching over and over again.
Yeah, I have been getting into the war film myself quite a lot in recent years. It's something I tend to come around to at Christmas just because they're a lot on TV. Like last Christmas, for instance, I picked out The Heroes of Telemark, which is another one that's based on a true story. I mean, the film's from the 60s, so yeah, but no, yeah. I'm really getting into my war films at the moment, and maybe I need to promote Memphis Belle to the top of the list, I think.
Yeah, give it a go. Yeah. There's something, it sounds ridiculous and almost insensitive, but there is something kind of comforting about war films, isn't there? Often, I think. Maybe because they're associated with Christmas a bit, and they often have happy endings. Yeah, I think it's a good one. I think you should watch this one when you get a chance. I do have some honourable mentions just that I had to give a shout out to. I so nearly put Dances with Wolves in instead of Arachnophobia, because I love Kevin Costner. He's a hero of mine. I love all his films, or most of his films, and this was, I think, his directorial debut. And I'm also fascinated by the American West, so perfect combination. But I just didn't quite make the cut. I didn't have a personal connection to it really beyond that. Back to Future 3, one of the better threequels, I'd say. Also set in the American West.
Agreed.
Miller's Crossing, I think, is one of the best Coen Brothers films. Obviously, it's something I didn't watch as a child. I watched it much later, but one of their best films. And then The Exorcist 3, which I think is one of the most underrated horror films. And another great threequel. Don't dismiss it just because it's a threequel. The Exorcist 3 is a good film, and you should watch it. They were my honourable mentions anyway. I don't know if you had anything that almost made the cut.
Has anyone mentioned Die Hard 2 yet?
No, good point. I mean, it was in my I think it was my Christmas film of choice from the Christmas episode.
Yes.
But it's a great sequel. I maintain pretty much as good as the first one. Definitely worth a mention.
Just as I will mention Kindergarten Cop. I've mentioned it a couple of times in passing, but just as a quick wild card, I remember seeing this on TV a long time ago. I haven't seen it since, but am I the only person who prefers Arnie's light-hearted output to his action output? I mean, yes, your Terminator, yes, your Total Recall, but Jingle All the Way, Kindergarten Cop, I mean, they don't really compare, do they?
I've never seen either of them. I've never seen Kindergarten Cop or Jingle All the Way, so I really can't. It's shameful, I know, but I can't.
Do give it a watch, mate. Give it a watch, I would say.
Yeah, I'd like to. I have seen Twins and Junior. They're both more light-hearted ones, aren't they? And I, from what I remember, I enjoyed them. So, yeah, maybe I need to get on the frivolous Arnie films. Have a bit of a season at home. So on to the correspondence. We did have some great messages in on our various platforms from you, the listeners, about this. We knew that it'd be a popular subject, and it has proved to be. So starting with Craig Fletcher, has messaged me with his choices. And he said, his three choices were actually very similar to mine. He's got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Memphis Belle, and The Hunt for Red October. So two of them, obviously, were my choices as well. He said he watched the Turtles movie loads as a kid. The Memphis Belle stuck with him over the years. The scene where they manually wind down the wheels as they're coming into land was so tense for him as a kid. I remember that scene. It's maybe the most famous scene of that film. And then The Hunt for Red October, he loved. And he's also read the book, and he says, you've got to love a Cold War classic, which I very much agree with. Cold War is, I think, a great source of film and literature over the years, and Hunt for Red October is a good one. So thanks for that, Craig. What do you have over there?
I've actually got some live correspondence.
Oh, blimey.
Which has come in from wife of the pod, Beth, while we've been recording. So she's clearly in the next room and can hear one half of the conversation. So this is some good stuff here. So she says, with regards to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles chat, in the early 90s, my brother shoplifted a bag of blue ink cartridges from the shop down the road and used them to dye his face to become a Ninja Turtle. In some classic 90s parenting, my mum removed it using bleach and a scouring pad. So my other question there is blue ink cartridges, weren't the turtles green?
Yeah, he's made a mistake there.
So there's a mistake that's gone on there. She also says, your Arnie film opinions are so wrong, I'm going to divorce you. And then she's sent a screenshot of the simple 3-step process for filing for divorce there. I don't know if you can see that. But,
oh dear.
Yeah, so thanks for that, Beth. And I suppose shortly to be removed as wife of the pod.
The position is up for grabs. Do you hear that, listeners?
I don't change my opinions on the films of Arnold Schwarzenegger for anybody.
Quite right. Okay, on to the Instagram. Someone called Adventuring Bat very kindly gave us some feedback on the decade, but unfortunately chose Tarzan, which is a film from much later in the decade, because this is the trouble with 1990. People see it and they just read the 1990s. It was specifically 1990. So I did get back to them and ask them what they thought about this decade, this year in particular. And they said, well, after some extensive research, I would say it has to be hands down Home Alone, but a nod to Pretty Woman, because there is just something comforting about revisiting that film. Like I said earlier, I've only just seen it for the first time, and it is very good, very 90s. Richard Gere in his full pomp and glory, and Julia Roberts breaking onto the scene.
I've recently seen a program about the making of Pretty Woman, but I've never seen Pretty Woman, so I know all about the making of it and how it got to be as successful as it was, but I've never actually seen it. So I think I've done that the wrong way around.
Yeah, I kind of did something the wrong way around as well in relation to that film, and that I saw there was a viral video going around of a deep fake, a deep fake where they changed the face of someone with not the face, and someone had taken Julia Roberts' face and replaced it with Willem Dafoe's face. And so some of the key scenes I'd seen already, but with Willem Dafoe's face, and it was really disturbing. Also on Instagram, McRufus says, quite a few great ones, but I'm going to go with the ones that I loved at the time and still watch now. So I'm choosing Home Alone and Edward Scissorhands. Still remember going to the cinema to watch them, and it felt quite epic. Worthy of a mention was Dances with Wolves, as we left a Fantasia screening for it because we wanted more dialogue. I felt like I grew up quite a lot that day, from a 9-year-old to a 9.5-year-old probably. So thank you very much for that, McRufus. Good choices. Edward Scissorhands, that's a big film, isn't it, for the decade?
Yep.
Sorry for the year.
I think Robbie chose that as his movie of the 90s, didn't he, on the last episode?
Oh, yeah,
so
of course he did. Yeah.
It's already had the seal of approval from one of our venerable guests.
Yeah. And then Quotables 2022 said, Problem Child. The kid took no prisoners. Teachers, nuns, escaped convicts, knocked them all down like bowling pins. I don't know what Problem Child is. Is that?
No, me neither.
I never heard of it. I'm just making sure that I've. Oh yeah, there it is. Problem Child, released in July, starring John Ritter, Michael Oliver, lots of people I've never heard of. Directed by Dennis Dugan. Well, there you go. Thank you, Quotables 2022 for that. Not something me or Stu had heard of, but
no,
sounds interesting. Well, I say it sounds interesting. I don't know anything about it, but thanks anyway for your comment. And then, do you want to go onto the Facebook, or do you want me to do it? There's a couple of things on Facebook.
If you'd like to get that loaded up, yeah, because I've got a live update from Beth, the current wife of the pod, who says, they don't do green ink cartridges in bumper-sized bags, you idiot. He needed loads. He's got a massive head. So there's the mystery of why.
Okay.
Of why the blue ink cartridges were chosen there.
I mean, yeah, I'm not sure if that quite makes sense, but I guess if that's all you've got.
One of the turtles had a blue headband, right?
Yeah, Leonardo,
so at least there was that. Yeah. So,
yeah.
And then he would have ended
Um,
up looking like Michael Stipe if he just done the blue band, wouldn't he?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, on the Facebook, brother of the pod, Adam says the most iconic film of 1990 for him personally was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He says, I would have been 8 years old, and I don't know if I remember seeing that or the second one at the Astoria Cinema in Chippenham, but I have a memory of coming out and walking back to the car with Dad and me, he says, if I was there, and running and jumping off the wall next to the pavement, doing what I felt like were kung fu kicks. I definitely remember doing that as well, but I think maybe for the third one. I know I liked the cartoon, but that film really grabbed me and stayed one of my favourites in a way that means I can't be objective about it. And I should probably never watch it with anyone who doesn't also already love it. I know that Jim Henson hated the violence in it and insisted that it was toned down for the sequel. So it's a bit of a rarity in being a PG certificate film that has Henson company effects. It was also recut for the UK release, and in my late teens, early 20s, I tracked down an American import VHS so I could watch the full version with those scenes added back in. And he says it's arguably still the best comic book adaptation, which I can't really argue with. Also on Facebook, Lee Burns chose some films, and he said Pretty Woman and Total Recall. He says they're classics for differing reasons. He also says Notting Hill, which we had to point out to him came out in 1999. So he was 9 years late with that, or early.
But of course, we will save that correspondence
Yeah.
and read it back out in the 99 episode when we get round to that. So that is in hand, Burnsy. Absolutely.
Yeah, don't worry. It's all been logged. Yeah, so thanks for that. Also, brother of the pod, Adam said Memphis Belle. So you can see there's a family connection there for that film. And then Hannah Kelly, also on Facebook, says watching Pretty Woman with me, because I watched it with her the other day. She said it was watching it with me was nerve-wracking because it's a movie dear to her heart, and she was worried that it wasn't going to stand up to the test of time. But luckily, it seems to have done that, and she realizes that she needs to watch it solo in the future, though, because she wants to say all of the lines out loud without annoying anyone. Which is testament to how much it means to her. So, yeah, thank you very much for all of that correspondence. I think that is all of it. I did put it out on the Reddit, the 1990s Reddit. I ventured into the dark world of Reddit. And 35 Industry Way said, just simply quoted, as far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster, which is the opening line of Goodfellas. And then Terrapin Sound said Exorcist 3 was Jeffrey Dahmer's favourite movie. What a creep. So there you go. A little bit of 1990 film trivia for you. There you go. And I think that is the end of the correspondence. I'm really sorry if I missed something. If I did miss it, please just send it in again and tell me off for not reading it. But
yeah,
we do.
Thank you so much to everybody who's got in touch. As always, we really do appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes it all so much more interactive and fun to hear from you. So
well, it's just nice to know we're just not talking to each other and nobody else, isn't it? That's that's the main thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Stu, what are your closing thoughts on the year 1990 in film?
Well, there are some great movies here. Unfortunately, I've focused most of my time on some of the poorer offerings.
It's all valid.
But there's loads of great stuff here. Loads of stuff that I love. We've already gone over them. Home Alone, Back to the Future Part 3, Die Hard 2. There are some great movies here, and it just makes me hopeful that we're in good stead for the rest of the decade to follow. And just the next time, I'll try and choose some movies which everybody agrees are good, and not just a few people.
Oh no, I think there's definitely space for the flops and the odd sequels and threequels in these podcasts. So yeah, don't worry about that. Yeah, I think it's a good year. Like I said earlier, it's clearly the sort of golden period for childhood films for me. Even if I didn't see them in the cinema, I saw them shortly after when they came onto TV or on video. So great stuff in here. Lots of sequels I noticed. Seemed like a lot of sequels, but maybe that's just normal for films of this period. But Yeah, good year, I think. Good year.
Mhm.
And if you do want to get in touch about any of our choices or to give us your own choices or anything from a previous episode, please do so in the usual places. We're on Twitter at allright90s. You can email allright90s@gmail.com, and we're on facebook.com/allright90s. All letters, no numbers in any of those names. And then on Instagram, we are allright.90s.podcast. That's allright.90s.podcast. And that's about it, I think. We're not sure exactly what we're going to be doing in the next episode.
No, we'll think of something.
Yeah, we usually do, yeah. Until then, though, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me. I'm off to watch RoboCop 3. I'll catch you later.
Cheerio.